In 1556, a 14-year-old boy named Akbar inherited a fractured realm. His father had died suddenly, leaving the young prince to navigate a territory surrounded by rivals competing for control of the Indian subcontinent. In this environment, Akbar's survival depended on a visible, public display of force. He needed to demonstrate that the throne was not vacant despite his age. When his foster brother, Adam Khan, murdered a high-ranking minister and challenged the emperor's authority, Akbar personally struck him down. He then ordered Adam thrown from a palace terrace. When the first fall failed to kill him, Akbar had him dragged back up the stairs and thrown a second time to ensure the execution was finished. This reliance on force extended to his early military campaigns. Following the siege of Chittorgarh Fort, Akbar ordered a massacre of the surviving defenders and 30,000 non-combatants, erecting towers of their severed heads to signal his authority over the region. By the end of his teenage years, Akbar had secured his position through a series of calculated, violent examples that silenced domestic and foreign opposition. These victories were made possible by a technological edge. The Mughals dominated the plains using artillery, deploying heavy iron barrels capable of breaching traditional fortifications. This reliance on firearms and organized cavalry allowed Akbar to expand his borders at a pace that earned the Mughals the classification of a gunpowder empire. However, conquest created a structural imbalance. Akbar was a Sunni Muslim ruler, presiding over a vast Hindu-majority population, supported by an administration that represented a tiny fraction of his subjects. He realized that while artillery could seize territory, it could not manage it. To govern sustainably, he would have to abandon the strategy of pure subjugation in favor of a new political framework. Akbar began shifting his approach, turning his former rivals into participants in the state through strategic marriages with local ruling families. His marriage to the Rajput princess Mariam-uz-Zamani included a provision that she could keep her Hindu faith. She was allowed to maintain her religious practices within the imperial harem, signaling to her family that alliance did not require cultural erasure. He extended this policy, promoting non-Muslim leaders to high-ranking nobles in his court. He formalized this through the mansabdari system. Instead of relying on hereditary warlords, Akbar established a merit-based hierarchy where ranked officers provided a set number of cavalry to the imperial army. These reforms effectively neutralized immediate threats. By giving his rivals high-paying, prestigious roles within his own system, he transformed them into guardians of the Mughal throne. To fund this expansive, integrated administration, Akbar overhauled the way his empire collected wealth. This chart shows the Dasala tax system. By basing taxes on a 10-year average of actual crop yields rather than a single year's harvest, the state protected peasants from being ruined by a single drought or flood. This predictable tax structure reduced the power of corrupt local officials and provided the stability needed for international trade to expand. The Mughal economy tripled in size. The state produced standardized silver rupees, featuring intricate calligraphy, ensuring a reliable currency for merchants journeying across the subcontinent. By tying the health of his treasury to the stability of the harvest, Akbar found that a system built on economic integration generated more revenue than a sequence of forced conquests. Once his power secure, the mature emperor shifted his attention from the expansion of his borders to the expansion of his own intellectual curiosity. Although he likely struggled with dyslexia and never learned to read, Akbar built a library of 24,000 books, employing scholars to read them aloud to him every day in multiple languages. At Fatehpur Sikri, he built the Ibadat Khana, or House of Worship. This building served as a neutral space where he invited Muslim scholars, Jesuit priests, Hindus, Jains, and Zoroastrians to engage in interfaith dialogue and debate the nature of divinity. These debates directly influenced his personal lifestyle. After studying the teachings of Jain scholars, he restricted animal slaughter and adopted a vegetarian diet, incorporating these principles into his imperial decrees. The presence of these diverse voices moved the court's daily functioning away from rigid orthodoxy toward the pluralism that defined his later years. He eventually introduced Din-i Ilahi, a syncretic philosophy that blended ethical elements from the world's major religions into a single moral code. Central to this was the doctrine of sul-e-kul, or universal peace. While it was a spiritual ideal, it was also a tool of statecraft that allowed Akbar to place himself above sectarian conflicts and ensure the loyalty of his diverse subjects. This final vision of unity and tolerance stood in direct contrast to the boy warlord who had once used terror as his primary instrument of survival. Akbar institutionalized a form of religious freedom that was virtually unknown in the 16th century, placing beliefs and merit above sectarian identity. His reign suggests that a massive, diverse population is more likely to accept the authority of a state when they see their own values reflected in its administration.